Nearly all my Shetland photos were taken in the mid to late 70s. I'd finished my photography course at Napier and was lucky enough to get a Kodak bursary to go up to Shetland and take some pictures at the height of the oil boom. This was one of the first photos I took up in Shetland. We went out in this small Shetland clinker boat built, and there was this wee lad at the bow. I just liked the way it all fitted together. This was in a place called North Nesting, an old couple with their wonderful old tractor. I'm not sure if it was a Ferguson or a Ford. Anyway, the light was just right, it looked good. This was another couple in North Nesting. Jeannie was an amazing character, and she always seemed to have a pet lamb, which was given the run of the house. Dave Dix was briefly, I think, a pig farmer, and I just got lucky with this one. As I was chatting to him, the pig just appeared at the doorway. This wasn't for the faint-hearted, the way they dipped the sheep. They would just herd them into a trough and push them under one at a time with a brush, as they were all scrabbling to get to the other end. Fair Isle, which is the most southerly island in Shetland, and this was a group of locals who appeared out of the church on a Sunday after church. Some of them, I guess you could say, they were wearing their D-mob suits. This was a surprise to see. It was an Egyptian factory ship in Lerwick, quite a contrast to the local wooden boats, this rusty old hulk. I saw this wee rowing boat silhouetted against the kind of haze in a place called Sandwick, and just watched them for a while. Eventually they came ashore and used the pipe, a sewage pipe, I think, as a jetty. I just liked all the shapes of them as they came ashore. A lovely family invited me into their house, and I did a few pictures. This was a classic Shetland living room with stove mantelpiece cluttered with wally dugs and what have you. Shetland always tended to be liberal, and this was a place called Was, Drizzly Day, and I just liked the graffiti and the shape of this guy heading towards me. I was invited to a wedding near where I was staying, and this was the bride and groom on their way to the reception in the local hall after the wedding ceremony. This was the fireman at the local airfield, Skatsta. Skatsta's near Sullomvo, so it was mainly for oil traffic, helicopters and fixed wing. And these guys I just thought looked strange in their space suits, their fireproof suits. I worked on a book with Tom Mortons. This was the scene of a chap he'd interviewed, Lorne. That's his wee house with the Sullomvo oil tanks in the background. This was the scene of the Brer, an oil tanker that was blown ashore. It lost its engine and ran aground in a dreadful storm in Shetland, 1993. I was sent up to photograph it for the Sunday Times.
Chick Chalmers was an important chronicler of society and culture in Scotland from 1975 up until his untimely death in 1998. In this case, he chose a particular location to investigate, Orkney, which he photographed in the mid-1970s. He worked with a small camera very quickly and unobtrusively, never setting up any of his pictures. Most often, the people he photographed never knew he was there. He was what might be termed a traditional social documentary photographer. He saw it as his role to inform us through photographs, supported by a simple caption about a particular aspect of life or location. Of course, these were taken in pre-digital days and are totally unmanipulated. Chick even refused to crop his pictures and almost never used flash. He was a purist. All aspects of life were covered, and he tried to tell the whole story as objectively as he could, although it's clear that Chick had a real affinity with people. He photographed all sorts of folk, from farmers and fish workers to politicians and artists. It was important to Chick to cover as much as possible, as objectively as possible. He also had a great respect for Arcadian traditions and especially lifestyle. It could be a hard life, but there was also a real sense of community. It wasn't a case of simply recording what he saw, but of making a good picture. He was an intuitive picture maker, and compositionally his photographs were often remarkable. In this picture, for example, he's waited patiently for the correct moment to take the picture, when the figures are just in the right position. There were a total of 125 photographs in the final edit for his book, Life in the Orkneys. It took real commitment and a lot of time to produce a body of work like this, and Chick was in Orkney for several months. Like all documentary photographs, these pictures become more valuable with the passing of time, since they tell us a little of what life was like 40 years ago.
The photographs you're going to see were taken between 1979 and 1981. For me, it was just after I'd left art college, having done painting. I'd become very keen on photography, and it was like a 2-year apprenticeship. So I was very keen to photograph anything and anybody which I felt represented that area or was unique to that area. This graffiti I came across, I was intrigued with it. Most of the graffiti I'd ever seen was in inner London when I was a student. And suddenly to see somebody having taken the trouble to put some graffiti on the side of the road up in this wild landscape really did interest me visually. The long and winding road that carries on into the distance as well, it just made a great image. This was up near John O'Groats. These were mainly housewives who were earning a bit of extra money out. The Scots called tatty howking. It reminded me of my mother in Kent picking hops to earn a bit of extra money. Sadly today most of it's now become mechanised, but these guys were having great fun out there. This is quite a bizarre picture. If you've been to games or Highland shows, you know that pipers about to perform, they like to get away from the crowd and tune their pipes. And I followed this chap away from the crowd, and it just looks bizarre that he's wandering off into the middle of nowhere playing his pipes. I encountered this chap on a long deserted moorland road. I would always stop if I saw any activity in that landscape. This chap reminded me, he was almost Neanderthal looking. He looked like he'd popped out of the peat. There he was stacking his peat, and then he would come back later in the year once it had dried off and take it home. People still do this, but not to such a large extent now. The first time I'd ever encountered gold panning, which happened in the Strathclyde Donnan. This particular couple were happy for me to photograph them, showed me later an assemblage of gold that they collected over the years, and she actually had a ring that had been made from the gold they collected over their holidays, which was lovely. I was there very recently, just passing, and it still goes on today. These ladies, looking very serious, literally assembled the Sutherland newspaper called the Northern Times. It was pretty unusual, you can't imagine that today in this automated age, but these ladies every Thursday would assemble the newspaper in the hotel in Goldsby called the Caberfay. The main road from John O'Groats, which obviously led eventually to Land's End, even in the late 70s, was still a hive of activity with charity walkers. And I met this chap pulling this buggy. He's still, we reckon, about 850 miles to go on his journey. 2 days later, we did find the remnants of the buggy down the road, so he'd obviously abandoned it, and he did carry on walking and made the journey, I guess.